question, and I call the honourable member for Higgins.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, it would be no surprise to you that the Morrison government is committed to keeping Australians healthy and safe. This bill builds on this objective by introducing a suite of amendments to the Therapeutic Goods Act 1989 that are fundamentally centred on promoting efficiency and flexibility in our healthcare system. This will be particularly critical as we turn attention to the swift and successful rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine over coming months. Mr Speaker, this bill comprises 5 principal measures designed to ensure we continue to keep Australians healthy and safe. First, this bill helps guarantee the availability of prescription medicine. Mr Speaker, throughout the COVID pandemic, there have been major concerns about the availability of prescription medicines, and I'd like to take note of the hard work of the Minister for Health, Greg Hunt, with regards to supply of prescription medicines during what has been quite a difficult period in 2020. This is a reality that few Australians have ever faced or even contemplated. Many will recall in March 2020 when India, the world's main supplier of generic drugs, restricted the export of pharmaceutical ingredients and medicines made from them, including paracetamol. This actually created a significant sovereign supply issue for many countries, including Australia. This bill will allow pharmacists to substitute different medicine for one that has been prescribed for a person in Australia in the case of a serious shortage of prescribed medicine. This would not require the approval of the prescribing doctor, but could only occur when a safe alternative is available. This will be particularly helpful in regional and remote areas of Australia. Importantly, it would only be permitted when the minister is satisfied there is a serious scarcity of a specified medicine under the Act. This will help improve the availability of prescription medication during medicine shortages, giving Australian families peace of mind that their loved ones will always have access to critical medicine. These legislative changes are very practical measures and are welcomed by patients and providers in the sector. Importantly, they build on legislative changes introduced in 2018. In 2018, our government introduced legislation to ensure medicine companies report shortages of important medicines as soon as they occur. In addition, if a critical drug was about to be removed from the market, the Department of Health must be notified by the manufacturer at least 12 months in advance. This measure has been a really important step in giving comfort to patients who have life-saving drugs but can have their health put at risk at the whim of overseas manufacturers and suppliers. Mr Speaker, the 2018 legislation followed on from a serious event that arose earlier that year when there was a critical shortage of medicines. Australia was one of the several countries hit by a shortage of EpiPens, which provide life-saving adrenaline for people who've had an acute allergic response. Now, Mr Speaker, as an allergist myself, I cannot tell you the chaos that was created in the lives of families whose children depend on the provision of EpiPens to keep their children safe from anaphylaxis. The phone was running hot across the country, as literally thousands of families were concerned that if their child was to eat a food that could potentially be life-threatening, this child might die because they didn't have an EpiPen that was available. In this and a number of other cases, the shortages were not reported in advance to the TGA within the Department of Health. Prior to 2018, medicine shortages had become an increasing problem, as medicine companies, manufacturers and importers had failed to comply with the previous voluntary reporting scheme. You'd be pleased to know that tough penalties are now in place for companies that do not comply with these new laws, including fines of up to $210,000 for each infringement and the possibility of further court action. The 2018 law protects patients who rely on vital medicines. They also give the community, medicine company and patients the opportunities to take action to mitigate against a medicine shortage. Responses to a shortage could include redirecting the available supplies to patients who need them most, nominating alternative treatments and providing PBS coverage for the alternatives. What the legislative amendments debated today do is ensure that the alternatives can be provided by pharmacists, including formulation and dosage changes, if there is a serious shortage. For instance, a pharmacist can provide 2 10-milligram tablets instead of a 20-milligram tablet if that is not available. And I have to say that is a frequent occurrence that does occur in daily practice, where pharmacists will have to resend up a script because they have a short-term shortage of 20-milligram tablets instead of 10-milligram tablets. A pharmacist can now provide a capsule rather than a tablet, or a topical cream rather than a skin patch, if there is indeed a serious shortage of a vital medicine. These are practical and safe alternatives that help ensure vital medicines are supplied to patients in serious need. Second, this bill will improve the traceability and monitoring of medical devices. Mr. Speaker, Australians have become keenly aware of the importance and utility of accurate and up-to-date health data over the past year. This bill will provide a pathway to establish a unique device identification, or UDI, database to improve the traceability and monitoring of medical devices post-market. This current inability to trace medical devices once implanted or supplied has been a costly and timely constraint on clinical action on patient safety issues. Recent unfortunate examples include defective mesh devices and breast implants. The bill consolidates the work of many public and private hospitals who are in the process of making changes to their systems to enable the recording of devices implanted and supplied. And as a previous member of a board of our local hospital, Cabrini, I know how important this change in process is to ensure safety for our important patients. Establishing a UDI system also brings us in line with our international counterparts, including the European Union, the United States and Japan, who have various stages of implementation undergoing the UDI system. These measures will also help prevent counterfeiting, which will help keep Australian IP safe. Mr. Speaker, this bill will enable faster responses to safety issues and more rapid and targeted recalls of defective devices, again, keeping Australians healthy and safe. This sort of market responsiveness to safety issues is something all Australians want and indeed deserve. Third, this bill will provide protection to our TGA investigators to successfully fulfil their duties. Mr. Speaker, in this place, we recognise the vital work of our TGA investigators and their role in keeping Australians healthy and safe. It is important that we give our TGA investigators scope and flexibility to carry out their duties effectively. This bill will allow TGA investigators to obtain illicit therapeutic goods to determine whether the Act and regulations have been complied with. For example, a TGA investigator may order a test purchase of such products to examine the goods and determine whether they are being supplied legally or contain other potentially dangerous substances not declared to purchasers. This type of practice is becoming rampant online. For example, selective androgen receptor modulators, which have been used to assist in gym and bodybuilding, can now be more formally assessed. This bill will protect TGA investigators from being found criminally responsible under state or territory law for unlawfully obtaining and possessing these types of goods for the purpose of investigating their safety. Mr. Speaker, by protecting the important work of our TGA investigators, the Morrison government is helping to protect Australians. And these types of investigative powers enables our world-class TGA to be on the front foot to ensure the public is protected from potentially unsafe products making their way to our shores. Fourth, this bill will protect Australians from internationally prohibited therapeutic goods. Mr. Speaker, just as we are committed to keeping Australians healthy and safe, the Morrison government is also committed to being a good global citizen. That is why the bill will allow for the making of regulations which prohibit the import, export, supply or manufacture of therapeutic goods that are prohibited under international agreements that Australia has ratified. For illustration, it is anticipated that the Minamata Convention on Mercury may potentially be ratified this year in 2021. This pertains to mercury-containing products, which, in relation to therapeutic goods, would actually affect mercury-containing thermometers and sphygmomanometers, as well as topical antiseptic, with a phasing out of mercury dental amalgams. This bill will allow for regulations to give effect to Australian obligations under the Minamata Conventions. It's at the core of improving the safety and therefore the safe health of Australians from dangerous therapeutic goods. Finally, and most importantly, this bill streamlines the rollout of COVID-19 vaccines. Mr. Speaker, one of the most important aspects of this bill is to enable the Secretary of Health to consent to the importation and supply of registered or listed therapeutic goods that do not have their registration or listing number on their label. Now, this may seem like a small detail, but it's actually quite important practical detail. And this is primarily designed to address the potential impediment to the timely availability of COVID-19 vaccines, because as we all know, some of these COVID vaccines, particularly the Pfizer one, have to be stored at very low temperatures. In the case of the Pfizer vaccine, this is at minus 70 degrees. Now, as a medical researcher myself, I know how difficult it is to store these minus 70 products, and it may not be possible to have the registration number affixed to the label. So this is a very pragmatic change that in other circumstances may result in the failure to have the registration or listing number on the label of the therapeutic good, and that could actually incite a maximum potential civil penalty of $440,000. This could be a major roadblock to the prompt and seamless rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine. So, Mr. Speaker, I know it seems like a small change, but it's an incredibly important one. And what it shows is a government that is very, very carefully thinking through all of the potential roadblocks so that we have a seamless rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine. It's a massive undertaking, it's an important undertaking, and it's one that I know Australians are waiting very carefully for, to make sure that all regulations, all of the policy and all of the potential practices that are going to be taken place do so for the safety of all Australians. Mr. Speaker, at risk of sounding like a broken record, we are committed to keeping Australians healthy and safe. This bill supports the delivery of the highest quality healthcare for Australians, particularly as we look to the future rollout of the COVID-19 vaccine. Australians need to understand that the government has their back. This vaccine will be safe, it will be voluntary, and most importantly, we look forward to an effective rollout. The measures contained in this bill will provide efficiency and flexibility, meaning Australians can rest assured that our healthcare system will continue to deliver in these unprecedented times. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.